can say that detectives from the Sexual Crime Squad are making a fresh appeal for information over 40 years after an 82-year-old woman was sexually assaulted twice in her own home in 1981 and then again in 1983. With advances in DNA technology and as a result of information received over the years, we're narrowing down our search now, and we believe the male offender lived in the area in Newport during that 2-year period. These two incidents occurred at the same residential property in Newport between September 1981 and July of 1983. 82-year-old Jesse Grace Lauder lived alone in her home in Mason Street in Newport. She had lived at the property for 55 years. Jesse was widowed and she sadly passed away in 1993. On Tuesday, the 22nd of September 1981, Jesse was in bed when a man forced entry through the rear door of her home around 10 p.m. He entered the bedroom with a knife and confronted her. Jesse was then taken to another room in the house and sexually assaulted. The man is then believed to have looked through Jesse's purse for money before he left the property and climbed over a back fence into a vacant lot in Oxford Street, Newport. Less than 2 years later, the second incident occurred. On Wednesday, the 6th of July 1983, Jessie was in her lounge room getting ready for bed around 9 p.m. when a man forced entry to her house, this time through the front door. He forced Jessie into the kitchen, and we believe this was to ensure that there was no one else present in the house, before taking her back to the lounge room where he sexually assaulted her again for the second time. During this second incident, the male offender made reference to the first incident and warned Jessie not to call police. At the time, he was described as aged between 20 to 30 years old, with a fair complexion, dark hair, around 175 centimetres tall, and he spoke with an Australian accent. We believe that he will be known to people who lived in the area in Newport at that time, and we're particularly keen to hear from anybody who may have seen, heard, or know something. Investigators have been methodically working through the information received over the years, particularly after a 2016 public appeal, and we believe the offender will have lived nearby during that 1981-1983 period of time. We're particularly keen to hear from anyone who can remember a man matching the description advised that might have lived in the surrounding areas of Mason, Johnson and Oxford Streets, and Lucius and Cunningham Lanes in Newport. In 2016, a $500,000 award was offered, which remains on offer today. Though Jessie is sadly no longer alive, these brutal attacks have had enduring effects on her family. Jessie was a vulnerable older woman who should have been safe in her own home. On the other hand, this man has lived the last 40 years with relative freedom and no repercussions yet for what he did. It is important as ever that the person responsible is brought to justice, and I absolutely believe that with the right information, this investigation can be solved. If somebody has knowledge of these incidents and has lived with that information over the past 40 years, now is the time to come forward. When Jesse Lauder should have been enjoying her golden years, she was brutally attacked in her own home on 2 separate occasions. This has left a significant impact on Jessie and her family. So much so that Malcolm is here today, representing his family and his grandmother for justice. While the offender would now be of retirement age himself, it's only a matter of a time before we could be knocking on his door.
Both in a family.
I guess the family is very grateful that the Victorian Police has chosen to continue to pursue this horrific case over such a long period of time. And there's been long periods where there's been nothing, and I guess there's been thoughts, certainly from myself and I guess others in the family, that was the end of it, that it's just withered away. We had our spirits lifted very much in 2016, and our hopes were raised that there was going to be finally some justice. At that time, my uncle and my mum were still alive. My grandma and my father had already passed at that time, and we thought that, you know, maybe there was going to be some justice that my uncle and mum could see. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the case, but we were contacted again last year and pleasantly surprised, and I guess we don't really know how much progress has been made by the police, but the fact that we're all here today and making an appeal for people with anything, if they know anything, how insignificant they may think it is, it's all going to be important to put a piece in the puzzle. And if we can just get that last piece that is going to clarify this for the police to be able to prosecute this offender and bring them to justice, that's really why we go through this.
Can you tell us about Jessie? What did she mean to your family, and what type of lady was she?
Well, I'm a baby boomer. My grandma's generation didn't have a title, but if it was, it'd be stoic. Like, she's born not at the turn of the last century, the turn of the century before. And she lived through 2 world wars. She brought up 2 boys at the end of the Great Depression. And I don't want to belittle people's circumstances, and we talk about a cost of living crisis, but for God's sake, there was a cost of living crisis then. My grandpa and my uncle and dad used to go out shooting rabbits so they could eat. So they were stoic and fiercely independent. Fiercely independent. They took nothing from nobody. They had nothing, but they lived and they provided for themselves. She's 5 foot nothing, my grandma, 5 foot nothing, and somebody has gone into the sanctuary of her own home, not once, but twice, where she should be the most protected that she should ever feel. I just cannot express the disgust I have for this person.
How much would it mean to you to finally see this person brought to justice?
Well, I think it would mean a great deal for the family. In addition to that, I think it sends a very strong message, a couple of strong messages. One, the police mightn't get you today, they mightn't get you tomorrow, they mightn't get you next week, but they're never going to give up and they're going to get you. So any perpetrator will be brought to justice. You can't get away with this brutality, this lack of respect. You can't do that and get away with it.
Can you tell us the effect that these attacks had on Jessie?
Like I said, she's a fiercely independent woman. After the first attack, she came and lived with my parents and I. We lived just around the corner, so to speak, 400 metres maybe away. But she only lived there for a very short time because she's going to go back. She's going to go back and live in her house. It's her house. And this person is not going to have her change her life. So she went back because she'll be safe there, won't she? She'll be safe in her own home. She'll be able to live her life. She'll be able to be independent. She won't have to be a burden on anybody. She doesn't want to be a burden on my mum and dad. Wanted to live her own life, not take anything from anybody.
And then after the second attack, had anything changed? Did she go back to the home after that attack?
Well, she was going to go back to the home, and my mum... My mum said that you might be able to go back there, but I can never live with myself to let you go back there. So she came and she lived with us. And she would have gone back.
Strong woman. Did you call her anything in particular? Was she grandma or nana?
Yeah, grandma.
Grandma. And, you know, what was your favourite thing about being with her?
Well, like, memories are interesting things, aren't they? Like, every Sunday night when I was young, we used to go around to their place for tea every Sunday night. And she got me addicted to tomato soup. Like, it's her fault that I have tomato soup all the time. Like that was it. It was tomato soup. She used to make some homemade party pies and little sausage rolls, and then had these little cupcakes with the wings and, you know, a little bit of... she got me addicted to whipped cream as well, with the whipped cream on top. So a lot of very strong, vivid memories of that.
You obviously loved her very much.
Well, she's a special woman. Special woman with all the things that she'd gone through. Never asked for anything from anybody, and always looked out for other people.
How many children did she have?
Two boys,
And who have now
both passed.
both passed?
Do you have a message for this perpetrator?
I was going to say, do the decent thing, but obviously the person has no decency. So I would think that after they've been free, having perpetrated these heinous crimes for 40 years, I would like to think that they've got a conscience somewhere, and they can look within themselves. They have no soul, but look within themselves to do what is decent, what is right. And maybe they carry a little bit of a burden. Well, release that burden.